Hey, everybody. Welcome to Midweek Live. So glad that you're joining us today. We have Chuck Padilla with us today. I'm excited because I've known Chuck for the whole time I've been here, I've known you. Yeah, so a good 15, 16, something like that years. How long you been coming to North Point?
Actually, I think it's like 13.
You think it's 13? Yeah?
Maybe longer, but at least that.
Time flies when you're having fun, something like that, right? How long? So you guys have been coming about 13 years. You have 3 boys?
Yes, ma'am.
You and your wife, Anna, have been married how long?
33 years.
Oh my gosh, really? Anna is amazing, so we'll say hi to Anna. Hi, Anna. Well, we're sitting and talking today with you, Chuck, because you're a family and marriage therapist. Mm-hmm. You've been doing that for how long?
Gosh, I've been in the mental health field for about 26 years.
Wow, okay.
And working with people, even prior to that. So I was a youth pastor up in the Bay Area for a little over 15 years. So
I did not know that.
I always feel like I've worked with people, and part of why I went into mental health was because of where I was in ministry, and I felt like I needed more than just being able to pray for somebody, to kind of help with families. Yeah.
Wow. So you were a youth pastor for how long did you do that?
A little over 15 years.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I had no idea. I don't know how I didn't know that about you. That's amazing. Well, the reason I asked you to come is because we are in a series called Remedy, and this series is really talking a lot about some hard things: guilt, emptiness, suffering, self-worth, and I mean, you name them all. I have felt them at one time or another. I'll almost guarantee everybody has felt them one time or another, and if they haven't, it's to come, most likely in life. And so I just thought it would be good to talk with you as a counselor. To just talk through some of maybe the myths about counseling that people have, some of the reservations they have about doing counseling, benefits, even honestly identifying depression and anxiety in our life and stuff like that. Honestly, we could probably talk for a very long time, but I wanted to share. I did some polling yesterday. I thought that was kind of interesting. People that felt that counseling was something that was really beneficial to them and that they really enjoyed. 64%. 36% had never tried counseling before. I thought that was a lot. That was a lot higher than I expected it to be honest. 82% of people said they are still dealing with guilt, past guilt, and shame from a decision from a long time ago. 82%, and 18% are not. And then I asked people just kind of what are the things that would hold you back from doing counseling. Cost and location, that actually came up. Cost came up a few times, and so right now, just really quick. Chuck was kind enough to send me a link with lots of stuff in it, lots of resources for you. So you're going to see that in the descriptions of the video that you're watching right now. But let's just stop at cost and location for a moment here. Because I've been in that world. Need counseling, you go and seek it, and your insurance, everything's got to line up. It feels like stars have to align in order for you to find the right person. So one of the resources you gave is a link where you can actually put in your insurance and stuff like that, correct?
Well, Psychology Today.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, Psychology Today, you can put in your zip code or your city, and you can look for therapists in your area.
Nice.
And each therapist on that site puts a description of kind of who they are and how, their theoretical framework, that sort of stuff. But they also should be putting how you can pay, right? So what insurances they take, what their... Some of them will post an actual fee. Sometimes they don't. Whether they have a sliding scale or not, and that sort of thing. So you can kind of look that up and know beforehand and select a few people to start calling with.
Yeah, and you actually said something to me that before we started that was really helpful, and that was that you can actually ask counselor, like you can actually call and ask some questions in advance.
Yeah, so if you're, you find a counselor that looks like might be a good fit, you can call and ask, well, hey, I want to come in for couples. How often do you see couples? Is that something that you feel comfortable with? How long have you been doing this? Like you just asked me, right? If I don't have your insurance, do you have a sliding scale and can we figure this out or whatever? I mean, there's lots of things that you can ask up front, right?
Yeah. And I've never thought about doing that before, ever.
It's like, it's like shopping, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you want to do kind of your comparison. If you're on Amazon, you're going to kind of scroll through and here's these headphones and here's these other ones and how much they cost and what are the things that they have and what do they do different. So you can kind of do that with therapists, and that's okay, right? And most therapists are willing to answer those questions. Again, on Psychology Today, you'll see some of that information already out there, right? So you
Right.
can say, well, you say you're a Christian counselor, what does that mean?
Right.
Will you be praying with me in session, or will, or what's your faith, kind of background, and that sort of thing. So that, so if I say, well, I'm Catholic and then you're Protestant, well, maybe it matches, maybe it doesn't. Maybe that's not a big deal, but maybe you need to know that, right?
Right. That's great.
So, or I'm divorced, and I'm, living with my partner right now.
Right.
Are you okay with that,
Right.
Or whatever.
Right.
And so those are questions that you can kind of ask.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are fantastic. So those are really helpful. And clearly you'll find out location when you look at stuff like that. Another one that came up and pretty common was that they didn't want to dwell on the past. This is, like past is past. I want to leave that behind me kind of a thing. I've personally done combinations of counseling through the years. I've done individual counseling, I've done marriage counseling, group counseling even. And I would say that, at least for me, it wasn't the point of dwelling on the past. And we talked a little bit about this too. So what would you say to that statement? I don't want to really dwell on the past.
Yeah, so the way I conceptualize the past is I really have to understand it, right? It's not this place that I'm going back to dwell, to pull up all these bad things and blame people and that kind of thing. It's really an understanding, because our experiences shape us, right? Both positive and negative experiences. And so I have to understand, it's almost like, if I'm on this trajectory and then this event happens, it pushes me and it pushes me and it pushes me. I kind of need to know where I'm at so that I can figure out where I need to go, right? So when I use my GPS on my phone, it says from your current location. And I go, no, I want to pretend I'm over here. And that's what we do emotionally. I want to pretend that I'm here and get to this place emotionally, relationally, spiritually. And I have to just be honest and go, you know what, I'm actually over here.
That's really great.
Right. And if I'm here, then I can make a plan to get to where I want to be in those different areas of my life, right?
So counseling really is kind of looking at that map and seeing the whole, like, you are here, right?
Right.
And then going, this is the place I actually...
And these are some of the things that happen, and part of it that is as I understand some of the things that have happened to me, I also can understand some of the ways that I protected myself, right? Some of the ways that I developed to survive those things sometimes, right? And that may be something that I'm doing currently. Right, that I don't need to be doing. And so what I tell clients sometimes, it's like me trying to put on my OP shorts from when I was 13, right? They're not going to fit. They're out of style. I'm going to look ridiculous. But emotionally, we still try to do that. That worked when I was 12, when I was 13, when I was 15, and I'm still trying to act that way or behave that way emotionally now. And I shouldn't try to put on those shorts. I just need to get a new pair of shorts. And so emotionally, I can go, gosh, that's where I started doing that. That's why I started doing that. And it worked to this point, but now I can do something different. Right. And I can notice that and choose something different.
So part of counseling is identifying how we've learned to function in the past and how maybe that is working for us or not working for us in the future.
Right.
Oh my.
So,
that is very loud. I apologize for that. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that or not. I assume you can. Hopefully we'll be able to get that fixed in a moment. I'm going to keep going and hopefully you can hear me. Do you want to talk about, what do you want to talk about in counseling? What's something that you actually want to talk about in counseling?
Are you asking me what I talk about in counseling?
No, what would a person want to talk about in counseling?
Well, it's wherever they're stuck, right? I mean, part of it is really how do people, I mean, why are you there in the first place, right? Generally, people are coming because there's something that's become too much. Right? And I encourage people to come in earlier so that we avoid the crisis. But sometimes people wait until the crisis, and so it's pretty obvious, and we're trying to kind of put out those fires, so to speak, right? But it really depends. I mean, most often it's about relationship. Right? And it's my relationship to myself, my relationship to others, and sometimes my relationship to God, right? How I understand that. And so there's just, I mean, there's a ton of things that you can talk about in counseling. Right? And so it could be problems in a situation or something new that's coming up. I've had people come in and, hey, I'm retiring. I don't really know who I am.
Right.
I don't know what
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
going to do.
all the identity
right?
you have in the job that
Right.
you have.
And so that's not a relational crisis other than maybe with themselves and how they
Right.
understand themselves, right? And
Right.
that sort of thing. And so, kind of people who've lost, all their friends, they're in their 70s or whatever, and life is just different. And so again, it's not that I'm having difficulty in relationship, but people that I've had a relationship with are just no longer here.
Yeah.
And so how do I deal with that? And so part of that is grief and normal stuff. And sometimes it can linger for years and becomes more of a depression, right?
Yeah.
So those, I mean, again, it could be kind of this crisis stuff, kind of this stuff that's brewing, difficulty with, with parenting or getting along with my partner.
I was going to say
whatever,
empty
right?
nesting, a real thing, your kids leave and all this identity you've had and all the things
Right.
you've been involved in with them as they've grown up and school and everything. And then they head out and you're looking at your partner, your spouse, and you're going, oh, right, we're supposed to do this
Right.
thing now. Right. And depending on what you guys have done to build your relationship
Right.
during those years, it may be kind of rebuilding at that
Correct.
point and what that
Absolutely.
looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's pretty common.
I
Right?
was going to say, I have a feeling it's really common because I have a lot of friends that
Yeah.
are in that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does counseling look like right now? This is a COVID year. This has been really
Yeah.
strange. And I know a lot of people have put off counseling because they're like, I do so much on the computer right now.
Right.
Don't want to do that too. So what does counseling look like right now?
Well, it depends. There are some therapists that are solely, online.
Yeah.
And then there are some that are like I see probably more than half my people in the office still.
Okay.
And there was a time where my percentage of people online was higher, and this is the first year I've ever done online.
Yeah.
Right. So
Oh, yeah.
that was not a thing that I had even thought of. But there were therapists that were already doing kind of online stuff, right? And that's been around for a while.
Yes.
So certainly that's gotten more popular, and so depending on a person's comfort level,
Yeah.
I prefer in person just because it makes more sense to me. There's more
More
about
of an actual
relationship,
connection with, yeah.
because you can have poor cameras or dark or whatever,
Or
and
poor
only-
internet.
right? There's all kinds of things, or loud noises, kind of.
Yeah,
in the
yeah, or loud
background.
noises that interrupt. Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
So there's all these things that can kind of happen that way, but it's still, I mean, there's some benefits to it, right? So suddenly I see somebody in their environment and where they actually live, and I get to know a little bit about them through that as well.
Yeah.
And so, but as far as therapy right now, it could be either or.
Right.
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 And then, and like I said, I know some therapists, some of my friends are doing only video
Right.
counseling.
So I guess that's
And-
something you can even ask
Right.
when you're contacting them, like we talked about. One of those
Right.
things is if you really want, if you have a preference either way, that's one of the things you
Right.
can actually ask. This year has been a year of a lot of loss for a lot of people.
Correct.
How do we identify whether we are working through grief in a good way or a bad way?
Well, so grief is a natural response, right? It's a human response, and it's a response to loss. And often we think of death, but and so that's certainly a place that we know. I'm grieving, I'm mourning.
Yeah.
But loss is also about relationship, and
Yeah.
about even so we've experienced this past year, right? A loss of normalcy.
Yes.
Of getting up and being able to go and sit down and have a cup of coffee at
Yes.
Starbucks, have breakfast with somebody, have lunch with somebody,
Right.
have people over. My cousin's daughter got married this year, and all these Mexican people couldn't be at the party, right?
Yeah.
Because it's COVID.
Yeah.
I've heard people who have had loved ones pass away and not be
Yes.
able to be in the
Can't be there.
hospital, not be able to have a funeral the way we've normally done it. So those are losses as well, right?
Yes.
I've physically lost somebody to death, but I've lost the ability to even perform
Mourn-
the ritual that I
mourn
normally
properly,
would, right?
yes.
And so one of the things about mourning is about routine and ritual, right?
Hmm.
And so we're actually coming up on this anniversary of COVID.
Yeah, in just a few days.
right?
Yeah.
And we celebrate anniversaries.
Mm-hmm.
So what will we do as a country, as individuals, right, as families, in light of this anniversary? Part of understanding and working through grief is ritual, right?
Yeah.
have this particular meal on the first, right?
Or like Thanksgiving or
Or
something,
Thanksgiving
right?
or whatever, right? This is a family ritual that we do because we're celebrating and honoring something.
Yeah.
But what are the rituals that we've lost, or rituals that we've created
Yeah,
during this
that we
year?
had to hit pause
right?
on.
But we've probably created some new ones, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not exactly what it was, but it is a way of being, and so kind of wondering, even that's a good thing to go, so, or ask ourselves as individuals and families. So what rituals and what routines can I continue to do so that I am healthy as I can be, right? Physically and emotionally and spiritually and
Right.
relationally. What are those places that I can continue to reach out to somebody, even if it's FaceTiming or
Right.
on Zoom or whatever.
Right.
It's not that I'm there, but I don't have to fully lose contact with my
Right.
friends, right?
Yes.
And I know I've spoke to lots of students who that's been their experience. They might see each other on the classroom Zoom, but they're not hanging out together, and they're not spending
Right.
time together afterwards. And so that ritual of being with others has been lost. And so how can we continue to keep some of those things and build some of those things in there, right?
Yeah.
But as far as how do we know when it's moving to a different place, right? For us with COVID, it's this thing that hasn't ended, right? There's not
Right.
a funeral and a burial, and now we're done, and we can kind of
Yeah, a distinct-
begin kind of
yeah.
moving through that process, right? And so it's like, oh, well, we thought, and now it's closed, and now it's open, and now it's this, and now, right? And so there's a little bit of hope right now as the vaccines are going out and that sort of stuff. But so it's been this kind of give and take a little bit, right? And so again, creating those routines, creating some rituals around that, for my health, for my emotional health,
Yeah.
for my spiritual health, my
Yes.
relational health. How can we do some of those things, right? And
Yeah.
those might be different based on our age and based on who we are and where we're at and the comfortableness of our friends and those kinds of
Right.
things. Because I do know people who do get together, and it's not large groups, but they said, you know what, we're still going to hang out. We're still
Right.
going to have a meal together
Right.
or work out together or whatever, right? And so and people are comfortable with that, and then others are not.
Right.
So part of it is who are the people around us, who are we surrounded with, and what can we build and what can we continue to have, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, for sure. I know that man, some of the rates over this last year of things like alcoholism, anxiety, depression, suicide rates are very high right now. This has been a really difficult year all around for a lot of
Right.
people. How do you identify if you're struggling with one of those things? How do you identify if you're struggling with anxiety? Like the first time I ever had, so I used to have panic attacks. First one I ever had, I believed I was having a heart attack, which I hear is pretty
Right.
common.
Right.
Drove to the hospital only to find out through all the blood work and everything that I was just basically hyperventilating and having a panic attack. But I wouldn't have, like now, at that point, that was very clear, and I knew from that moment on,
Right.
okay, I know now what that feels like.
Yeah.
But even identifying some smaller steps that took me to that place, as I got better at recognizing it was better for me in the end, because I could
Yeah.
kind of control that emotion before it got out of hand. With each one of these, there are things. So let's say alcoholism. What is an indicator that maybe you're drinking too much?
Well, that's a good question, right? If I'm drinking as a way of numbing, it's probably, it's probably an OP shorts kind of a thing, right? It's not the best thing. So if I'm doing it to reduce my stress, if I'm doing it to, to manage, to cut the edge off, all these different ways that we say it, I think you need to look at it, right? Certainly, if I'm becoming intoxicated, that's a thing that you need to wonder about, right?
Yeah.
And so, alcohol is one of our legal drugs.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's one that's used often, again, as a way of coping. So, you asked about depression and anxiety, and it's like, when I have those feelings, am I able to manage them, right? Do I even know how to? And so, again, that may be a coping strategy that works. Maybe not the best. Might have some other ramifications. Maybe not. Right.
Right.
We have people who are functioning alcoholics, right?
Right.
And part of it means that I'm dependent on that I keep shoving myself into those shorts, and I don't really care what I look like, even though there's a potential that I might be embarrassed, right?
Right.
Or I might lose a job, or I might lose this and
Right.
this and that, right? There's this potential loss that alcohol use could bring, right?
Right.
And then some people just use it socially, right? It's like a glass of wine with my meal every now and then.
Right.
And so if I'm not using it to numb, as a way of coping somehow,
Right.
that to me is kind of the difference.
The difference
right?
between the two and identifying. So you kind of have
Right.
to stop and ask yourself, why
Right.
am I actually going for this right now? Why am I feeling something I'm trying to not feel anymore?
Right.
Or am I just having it with dinner
Yeah.
and it just is? Okay. So young people, suicide rates are very high. I mean, suicide rates are high for adults as well. But yeah, how do you reach out? It's on the person really to say
Yeah.
that they need help. They need to reach out. But how do you encourage that?
Well, I think you allow for the conversation, right? Sometimes we're afraid, oh, if I say something, then I'll put that thought in their head, and the thought's in their head if they have it, right? And so to go, wow, and this is really part of just even listening and being with somebody, because a lot of times we don't really listen, right? And to be able to wonder about what feelings another person has, to hear, hey, somebody died in my family, or my dog died, or
Right.
I really miss school, or I wonder if I'm whatever. I mean, just to hear the feeling underneath some of that, right?
Yeah.
And not to go, oh, well, you're fine. People like you. Don't worry about it, right? We tried to take away that bad feeling, and sometimes it's like, wow, really? You feel like other students don't like you, like you're alone? Gosh, I wonder if you've ever had the thought of just not wanting to be here, because that's a common thought when people feel alone or they don't belong. And so now I have permission to say, right, I don't know what my parents are going to say. I don't know what my friends are going to say. I don't know what the pastor's going to say if I tell them that I'm suicidal. Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's a sin. You can't take your life. Well, but I give you permission to say those scary words that you're feeling, right? But I have to listen. I have to be a good listener, a good partner, right? A good companion with that person,
Yeah.
right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, ultimately, we need to just encourage saying it when hopefully we are creating safe places for
Right.
people to say
Right.
it, right? So small group leaders and leaders or people around
Yeah.
others, just, it sounds like number one, being intentional with people around you, truly listening when you ask
Yep.
them how they're doing. I mean, how often do you walk by somebody doing, how you doing? Oh, good. And you just
Yep.
kind of keep going, but like actually stopping and taking the time with people, listening, intentionally listening.
And sometimes it's noticing, right? So
Oh,
maybe
that's great.
maybe I've noticed that somebody's less themselves, right? So they're doing less, right?
Yeah.
So the things that once gave them pleasure, hanging out, being with people, getting online, playing a game with somebody else,
Right.
they suddenly kind of not doing that, or they're quieter, or they're isolating more. Even noticing behavior sometimes
Yeah.
is the thing, even if they're not saying stuff, right?
Yeah.
One is to listen, one is to notice. But
Right.
part of it is, like you said, it's being intentional. It really is about that companionship, about how I'm connected with others, right?
As a parent, you try to do that. I feel like, you always try to do that with your kids, right? You're trying to just kind of, how you doing? Kind of temperature checking, how's everything going? But would you agree that it's good to have a variety of people that your kids can actually reach out to? Your
Sure.
kids will reach out to you, yes, but sometimes they're maybe a little bit more comfortable opening up to someone else, and
Yeah.
so encouraging.
And certainly developmentally, right? There's a need for that, right? So there's a point where adolescents go, okay, mom, dad, yeah, you're supposed to say that. You're supposed to love me. You're supposed to encourage me.
Right.
But I need to know what other people think about me, right? And I need to know what other people think about life. And we need to encourage that, right?
Right.
Sometimes we're afraid of that. Oh, no, don't go out there and think that and hear that, and then you're going to
Right.
get lost. Well, hopefully we've done a good job of kind of laying a foundation for our
Right.
kids, right? And so again, developmentally, sometimes our kids just need us. It's like, oh, here you go with that strange lady. For smaller kids, it's like, no, that's not comforting, right?
Yeah.
Even though the strange lady might be totally a comforter and a
Right.
wonderful person.
Right.
But developmentally, they need that parent, right? And so with adult kids, with adolescents, it may be a different space, right? We're a consultant to kind of our adult kids, and we're more kind of this person who doesn't have full authority over our kids, and I'm not sure we ever really do, right?
Right. We want to believe we do, though.
But again, how do we encourage a safe and healthy way of them connecting with other people who are going to help them and encourage them, right? And how do we teach them to know even what that kind of a person is, right?
Yeah, and part of it is talking about it,
Right.
right? Talking about how there are different people that will speak into us in our lives at different times. And I know, my boys having grown up, and yours too, at this church or just at church in general, there's so many leaders and people that
Right.
are really pouring into them. And it is still about conversing with your kid. You're not saying that you're
Right.
not, I love how you said that. It's really a partnership. You're partnering with this other person as well. And you're recognizing that they may open up to this person more than you, and that's okay. You're not trying to get the down low on all
Right.
of this and that. You're trusting that if it's something really, really important, they're going to share back with you. But really, you're allowing for a community to help
Right. Yeah.
structure and help people to understand, help your young people understand who to trust, how to encourage each other and stuff. That's why small groups and things like that are so very important, right?
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
what is the difference between personal counseling and like group counseling?
It depends. There's a couple of kinds of counseling. So there's like support groups, right?
Yeah.
And there's different types of support groups. So like we have NAMI, right? So that's we have a local chapter, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, right? And
Right.
so it's family members who have a member who has a mental illness.
Right.
And you can just kind of go and sit and hear people's stories and how they've managed
Right.
that particular illness, right? And
Right.
so that's a support group, and that's a group, right?
Right.
And then there are other groups that I'm able to kind of think through some of my stuff and my past issues and kind of where I'm at now, and somebody kind of helps guide me a little bit, right? And that's a support group as well. But that's kind of this personal stuff that I'm working on. And then there's a therapeutic group, and that's led by a therapist, right? And
Okay.
so in a therapeutic group, you're getting support from other group members, but you're also getting specific direction from the therapist or therapists that are running the group, right? And
Okay.
so as opposed to like a CR group or something like that, where you're not there to fix anybody, but you're there to support each other, and you can hear each other's stories.
Yeah.
And that commonality helps me to go, okay, I'm not alone, and I can draw strength from other people in the group. In a therapeutic group, then you have a therapist that might also guide and direct, and specifically with an individual or the group specifically in different ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'll break it down a little bit more. Celebrate Recovery, when you go to a recovery group, at Celebrate Recovery specifically, there's some rules. There's things like there's no crosstalk. You're not looking to actually work together as a group to say, hey, I'm going to interject with that right now, right? Yeah. That's the kind of difference we're talking about. And then in the therapy group, the therapist is actually working with people, and
Right.
you're kind of the others are kind of participating in
Yeah, and most of the time those groups have a specific goal, right?
Yeah.
It's a socialization group or some sort of an addiction group or something like that. And so the therapist has a specific role, and you're working on kind of a specific issue.
Yeah, that's really great.
And there's even been like couples groups, right? So people don't often think about that, but there are times where couples get together, and that's an interesting group. I've not led one of those yet.
I've never
right?
done one of those.
But there are different organizations and places that actually do that, right?
The thing that actually stood out to me is I had an aunt. It doesn't matter. Dementia. People that are supporting and loving a family member that is struggling with dementia. And the thing that actually stood out to me was how much you need support to help understand.
Right.
That situation.
Right.
So it's supporting them, but you need the support too. You need actually somebody to come
Right.
alongside you and a group of people so that you're actually heard, because you're dealing with somebody with dementia or
Right.
Alzheimer's. They don't remember.
Right.
And instead of the struggle of constantly trying to get them to remember something, you have to kind of let that go to some degree. And that's really hard.
And that's an issue of loss. It's a loss in the depth and the intimacy of the relationship.
It's
right?
changed.
And it's changed. And so you're mourning that. You're going, well, wait, we used to, and I was your favorite, and what, right?
Yeah. You trusted me.
And it just disappears in some ways, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard to understand because we have a way of interacting, and we want to come to that place, and all of a sudden it's like, well, who are you, and why are you in my face?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well, don't you remember me?
Yeah.
And so there's this shift, there's this thing that has to change in us, and it's confusing. And so that support for us as we help, right?
Yeah.
Is important.
Yeah, it's a great example of how you've been doing something a specific way. And in these cases, you've been doing it almost your whole life, their whole life, till this huge change happens in the end. It's really hard to let go of.
Right.
It's really hard to understand that the dynamics will never be the same. And you're kind of constantly losing that person all the time, and having an understanding that that is the new reality.
Right.
That is the new way that it's going to look for them, and this relationship won't be the same. And that part of that is mourning that. I love that you said it that way. That's something I know a lot of people are also dealing with. Can you name, so there are like stages of grief. You can go into those stages of grief at different times.
Yes.
Not in the same order.
Yeah, so the basic stages are denial, right? That shock and disbelief, that initial, when you find something out, right? And then you have anger, then you have negotiation, depression, and acceptance. And it would be really great if we could just move through those and then be done. But that's not the way we are as human beings, right?
Yeah.
And we can move in and out of those oftentimes, and sometimes we're not completely, maybe we don't experience one as long as others, right? But to know that that's a normal part, because sometimes that anger piece freaks people out. And it's like, why am I so angry? Why am I angry that they died? I'm mad at them because I told them they should have done whatever, right? And they didn't. And that's a normal part of it, right? And so sometimes we want to remove a feeling and get through it or get past it. And part of it, again, that's a process that we move through. And, you know, my grandma Petra died in 1992. And I still have thoughts of her.
Yeah.
I still, you know, and most of the time they're happy.
Right.
Right. It's just this like, oh, that food right here, driving through some neighborhood. It's, that smells like Grandma Petra's food right there, right? Or, I remember when she did this, or like when we're together as cousins or whatever. It's like, I remember, you know. And so we can often have these fond memories. Sometimes it's a sad one. Sometimes it's just this missing her.
I was going to say, is
Right?
acceptance truly the last one, or do you find yourself ever
Well-
kind of reliving some of those others?
The way I see acceptance is kind of this final process. So in loss and devastation and betrayal and these kinds of things, it's like I have this whole group of papers that just get thrown all over the floor, right? Shock and disbelief. I can't believe what happened. I don't know what's happening. And acceptance is really being able to kind of pick all the papers up and kind of file them away, put them in folders, and kind of get them into the file drawer. They're always there, but they're not all over the place. It's not these big overwhelming
Got it.
feelings, right?
Got it.
So it's not like, okay, it's cool. I'm glad that happened. You know, that I'm divorced now, or that person died, or that, you know,
Right.
I haven't been able to go to school or whatever. It's like, okay, so here's this stuff, and now I'm beginning to make sense of it. And I'm able to manage the feelings that come with it, right? And I understand them better, right? And that sort of thing. So it really is kind of pulling that stuff together and finding a way of organizing it within ourselves, right?
That's great. It's just not as chaotic, maybe.
Right.
That's great. These have all been so helpful, and even you and I have talked about, as we get through this remedy series, we may just have you come back and talk even more about some of these things. But this was great, and I think really helpful. We've got people that have absolutely said that this has been really helpful, for sure. And so, yeah, we would love to continue the conversation with you. And thanks so much for coming out and for sharing. And we even got a little bit of a disruption, but that's okay. That worked out perfectly fine. Actually, a perfect example of how you just kind of
Right.
you just kind of work through it and sit through it. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday for services as we hit week 2, or actually week 3 of Remedy. We're going to be talking about self-worth. And so, guys, we hope you'll join us. Have a great rest of your day.